Hi, I'm Wendy Packard. Have you ever heard of the diffusion of innovation? Me either. And yet, every day we take part in it. The diffusion of innovation is a theory created by Everett Rogers in 1964, over 50 years ago, and yet it's still very relevant today as when he came up with it. Today I'm going to explain the diffusion of innovation, its 5 categories. I'm going to give you some examples of how people fit in those categories. And then I want to talk a little bit more about how I fit into those categories and how I might want to be making a change sometime soon. I'm going to flip the camera around and show you up close this chart so we can talk about quickly the 5 parts of this theory that Everett Rogers came up with about innovation. So let me flip it around quickly. And here we are. So the first section here we see is innovators. There's going to be 5 groups, kind of people, or we'll just say people, innovators. Then there's early adapters, about 13.5% of the population. Early majority, which you can see is a much larger group, 34%. Late majority, and then we start to decrease down to the laggers, 16%. So what does all that mean exactly? Let me set you back down and I'll explain it. So let's take examples. For instance, in this innovators, these are the folks or the people that might be those folks that know the newest products coming out, or maybe even created those newest products coming out. Those entrepreneurs that are starting new things. And as you can see, it's a very low percent, 2.5% of us are in that big group. Next is the early adapters. Those are the folks that once the product is kind of out there and started to get some weight behind it, people have talked about it, but they're still ahead of the group, they might run out and buy it. So an example, the brand new iPhone's coming out and that iPhone might go on sale, somebody camps out for 4 days. That's going to be your innovator. But the person who camps out just an hour before the store opens, that might be your early adapters. And then after the phone's maybe been out for a week or two and it's proven and people start becoming more familiar with the technology, that group, the next largest group, might go out and purchase it, and that's our early majority. In the group after that, after it's tried and true, and maybe we start seeing a decrease in price, or it's been out a little bit longer, we're going to see the late majority. And then after that, we've got the laggers. And those are folks that sometimes won't even use the technology. In this case, we're talking about an iPhone. Maybe someone is still using their flip phone, or maybe they're not using a phone at all. They would fit into that category. But you can see how with a product, when you would be marketing or communicating about a product, how you'd want to market to all these different people. You'd want to reach those people that are not so quick to jump into new things, as well as reach those people that are jumping right in and creating the new things. When I think of innovators, I think of people like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook. In my life, I don't know many of these innovators, but I will tell you in my work environment, studies say from the Department of Labor, they say that about 20% of service members getting out of the military will in fact be these innovators. They want to take on the new things. They want to take on the new ideas. So I see a lot of that in the classes I teach. They want to start their own business. Those early adapters, I have a friend, her name's Idani, and she is definitely one of those. As soon as the new product comes out, she wants to buy it. She's got the new everything Apple that you could ever want, that I know that I can go to her and say, hey, what's this new technology? And she already has it in hand. And so she'd fall into that category. Early majority, that would be my son. He's 16. And once the product's been out there, he's had a little time to test it, he's got a little peer pressure behind him, he's going to jump into that category and he will go ahead and get the product probably before most of us. Then there's the late majority, and my husband and I both kind of fall into the late majority, and we discussed it, and the reason we fall into the late majority is always cost. It's always cost for us. So for instance, we didn't get a flat screen TV until 2 years ago, where everybody had flat screen TVs. They were getting large TVs, and we just didn't. Our TV worked fine. It was small. We didn't have that flat screen TV for a very long time. In fact, our very first one came as a gift. So we are kind of that late majority, not necessarily because we're afraid of the technology, but because it's the cost. And so we wait for it to go way down, and then when there's a need, when our TV broke, there was a need, we went and purchased it. And then after that is those laggers. And I think of my mom when I think about laggers. She had trouble, she was in her 80s, and she had trouble working the remote. No more did she want to get a cell phone. She didn't need it. She felt like it was just ridiculous. And you couldn't market her an iPhone and say, look at all the features it does. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to make your life better. It didn't matter to her. She just didn't need that. She had a landline, and that was fine. And I don't know that we would have ever convinced her to be onto something like a cell phone. She stayed back here pretty firmly. So as I said, I fall right in here in the late majority, and even sometimes on some technology in the lagger section. And I hope in the future that I can get more into the early majority and some technology that would help me improve my work. So I'm looking more to my son to teach me a little bit more how to get onto things a little sooner and not be so intimidated by them. So what I've talked about today is I've introduced you to this theory of innovation, diffusion curve of innovation by Everett Roger from 1964. I've given you the 5 different categories, and I've given you examples in each category, and I explained kind of where I'm at and why I want to move forward. So now you may have never heard of this before, but now you can sit back and think, which one am I? Am I one of those people that am an innovator and I jump out there, or am I one of those people that takes a very long time to adapt to technology? Thanks so much for listening. Have a great night.